You know, it's a really simple thing, that if you're a socialist, right? The motivation to demand disclosure individual salaries is from a place of envy or dislike. No, it's not. Have you seen how many times content creators will talk about how, like, we need your support for this thing, you know, because we're like, you know, we've been demonetized on YouTube, or we're struggling with this and this, and like, we need your support. Well, no, if you're gonna say we need your support, post your fucking earnings.
I don't want moderators to come on board exclusively because they want to.
Oh, no. This Hasan debate is 2.5 hours long, so we're probably going to need to fire the fuck in. What's he saying? What's this about? Socialism. So I want to watch the whole 2.5 hours. Did they really go on for that long talking about socialism? I get. Okay.
You're a radical. You're a radical psychotic leftist. You are literally Mao and Stalin and Karl Marx together. That's how these dumb motherfuckers in America operate.
Which brings me to the point where Trent is talking to Will Neff about the Turkey charity, and then things slide completely out of control, and then Hasan and then calls out Trent for crypto gambling. You want me to link it to the thread or not? Because remember, this happened like this week.
He knows what. Yeah, he knows what it is. I know what it is. Yes.
Okay. Then how about Train? You walk me through your initial point.
Is Train even a political streamer? Or is he not? I thought he did gambling. My experience of Trainwrecks is that he does gambling streams for like 80 hours or some shit. He used to host panels, yeah. But he's not like a dyed-in-the-wool like political guy, right? Is he? I think he just dabbles. He has a philosophy degree. Why does Hasan not debate political people? I thought he did a debate with like Charlie Kirk once. I feel like he could expand his horizons a little bit more. I don't know.
What did you say to Will, and what did you say?
So he says it's not worth it, which I kind of get. Okay. He debated Michael Knowles. What, really? Wow.
I wanted to the call initially to
if you can find a clip, that would be very helpful.
Reach out or
chatter.
to put out
That'd
an
be very
olive branch,
helpful.
right? I was talking about how I love the podcast.
I'm pretty sure he debated XQC as well, didn't he? Over slurs. But yeah.
Among other things, right? And then the conversation came up. He brought that up as an example, and I clarified the example because at the end of the day, olive branch or not, I think there's an avenue regarding, you know, the socialism in which, you know, Hasan preaches but doesn't act with, right? There's that avenue where I don't think we'll ever come to terms with together, right? So that.
Oh, I know he debated Fuentes and Sargon alongside Destin, and that was with Trainwrecks hosting. It was on Trainwrecks' show. That was a train wreck. That debate was not good. It was right after Christchurch as well. And I think Hasan, from my memory, I think Hasan kind of threw it. But
that is the disconnect. I don't know if him and I will find that middle ground for. But that didn't come up because I went on there to talk about it. That just kind of came up passively. If you watch the clip, the entire clip, that was generally a positive call. Right? I think he kind of saw the clip and he picked those like 10 seconds out.
Unless Hasan doesn't feel that way.
As far as like socialism being at odds with my mode of existence, that is another thing that I am very that is another thing that I've been very consistent on with respect to like having anti-capitalist values while simultaneously still being a fucking dumbass who likes commodities that are luxurious. That has been a consistent talking point for myself for a very long time. So I don't know why you think that ultimately conflicts. Socialism is not a poverty cult. Socialism or anti-capitalism or wanting to make things at least marginally better for working class Americans is not, no matter how much people say, oh, lol, Bernie Sanders has 3 houses fucking owned or whatever the fuck. That is not at odds with the way I live. This is a point of contention, though. I will agree. There's broad debate on the subject matter. There's many different kinds of ways of approaching it, but ultimately it's about the relation to the means of production. That's it. That's all this is, and it's about giving workers more autonomy It's not about doing charity, okay? I've never said socialism is charity, even though I myself engage in charitable acts. I've been fairly consistent on that as well, with respect to just doing it regardless of whatever people say, even if they shit on me. I think XQC can advocate for that as well. I've literally had private conversations with them many, many years ago even about, like, it's a good thing. People will shit on you regardless. You should still do it. But yeah, socialism is exclusively and almost entirely about the relations of the means of production and how society is developed around the current organization of the economy and how commodities are produced.
Okay. So you're saying that if there's a distinct point in what he sees socialism and the action you can do to further socialism, and okay, it makes sense. Do you agree with what he said? Did you know what he said?
No.
He says that socialism, right, is more the means of production and the worker stuff, and not the whole spread the wealth thing. And I think you say, oh, we should spread the wealth more type shit, right?
I would agree. So I would agree with
spreading the wealth is not socialism. If that was the case, then Jeff Bezos would be the #1 socialist. You know what I mean? He albeit a very minor part of his overall wealth, he gives back fucking.
Let's say so. It's perfectly possible that all of society is like worker co-ops, and everyone's got their level of autonomy, and pay is probably quite equal across all these industries. But then I guess the question is and you could technically still have like millionaires in that society if there are some people who just live off of donations and super chats and Patreon money that they become really, really rich. But I guess the question is like, even if it doesn't have to be part of socialism, but I imagine if you're a socialist, you'd probably still think that redistribution of wealth is a good thing, right? Like progressive taxes so that you don't have, because one of the big outcomes of wealth inequality is lots and lots of social problems. There are actually like books there's one particular one called The Spirit Level, which is all about how like so many social problems correlate very strongly with wealth inequality. Like the more unequal a society becomes, the more social problems there are. Like, and they went through a whole bunch of them, like down to like teen pregnancies and crime and fucking. It's like the wealth gap is a very important thing. But I guess like, would you just write that off completely? Like, so could you technically have a socialist society where the wealth gap is bigger than a capitalist one? I don't know. If that's the case, like, why do you become a socialist? I would say, and I would probably suggest that it's because because one of the results of socialism is that you would expect society to become more equal because people have more discretion over their pay, and that means that bosses can't pay themselves too much and workers don't get paid too little. So there's like an evening out there. That's usually what happens. The wealth gaps in co-ops are a lot smaller. And then I guess the idea there is that different sectors of society become less alienated from each other, and there's less like social tension between those two groups. Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, that he would be literally a socialist if that was the case.
So I think the point is this, right? Preaching socialism without action is literally just capitalism. Do you understand? If you preach the idealistic way that society should operate, yet you don't implement any of those systems, right, within your own, let's say proportionally within your own community, to show that these systems can work. Just wait.
No. I love that. No, that's actually a great point. It's a great point, and it unfortunately fails to capture how inescapable capitalism is. Do I benefit from it? Absolutely. I'm a profoundly fortunate person, something that I regularly acknowledge and talk about all the time. I'm very privileged. I'm very fortunate. These are things that I do not hide. I'm wealthy. Another thing that I do not hide. I don't know why people always say that I hide it, but
do you understand that?
If cooperatives can work individually, and I can point to socialization working in other countries, for example, like in European social democracies like Norway, even in Canada, it works better than the United States, even though it has its flaws. So there are instances of like socialization, not socialism, working in other countries, and yet that has still not changed people's minds in the United States of America. So I don't know why you think that like something completely and entirely removed from socialism itself, which would be me, like, I guess, doing socialism in my own community. I don't know how you would do that, but I would love to hear your perspective.
Well, because again, like, I get maybe because Hasan sees himself as like a revolutionary, so it's therefore it's like it's a socialist revolution, or there's no socialism, which would be, I doubt he thinks that, surely. Like, because if you were a socialist, I think like one of the ways that you could implement your values now would be to fund a co-op, right? If you've got millions of dollars, if you've got enough to afford a house or a Porsche, I would imagine, or like whatever $3 million house, whatever the fuck he has, I don't see why you couldn't help to start up like a co-op, right? Maybe if there's something within your community like that you care about, or even making your own work a co-op, because Hasan is not just made by like, he's not completely self-made, right? I'd imagine he has editors. I imagine he has mods. But I don't think he wants to run that business in the same way that a co-op would be run, does he?
I don't know how that would genuinely change people's minds in that regard. But as far as like my own form of commodity,
is founding and bankrolling a co-op really a co-op though? Yeah, because as long as you so within co-ops, I think if you became like if you founded and bankrolled it and started to use that, the fact that you did that to take part in to be like a shareholder with discretion, then that would make it a bit less of a co-op. But like right now, there are co-ops that can have shareholders, but the shareholders only are there so that they can sell their shares later, right? So they invest in the company so that they can sell their shares later. They're not there making decisions about the company, because you have to actually have the buy-in. You have to be like you have to be a proper state, like you have to actually have stake, like be a worker within the company to make key decisions. So you're like a shareholder but with less power, basically. So you could do that.
Production. I work with union labor in union shops in the United States of America, and it's domestically manufactured when I do merchandising. And I have some form of cooperative organization where the people that I work with, not my workers per se, but people that I work with, whether it be my producers or editors, have full autonomy over their times, full autonomy over how much they make, full autonomy over a percentage of the profits or even more. Not only that, but they also have editorial independence, like in the case of Ostenox, who can say what he wants, and I'm not going to, go after him unless he's making an erroneous mistake. So that's
Which
it.
He has,
that's my perspective, and I think I try to live by my values as best as possible, and I think I do a decent job, I think, at that.
That perspective is convenient, in my opinion. Like, it's a convenient perspective.
If you give your editors, what was that, like, editorial autonomy? Like, if you're being generous to your editors, how is that different from a capitalist industry? Because you can be like a software company or whatever that's like very, very generous to your employees. I don't know how that makes it a co-op. Because I think the big thing about a co-op is that your workers actually, it's not only that they control how much they earn, but like by extension, co-ops, like co-op workers control how much their bosses earn as well. Like a lot of co-ops, like especially like with Mondragon, like the Mondragon co-ops have like pay ratios that the workers vote on within the company. So they can vote for the pay ratio to be like 1-3 or 1-4 or 5, 6, 7, right? So that they don't have like a CEO or the person on top earning like millions and millions of dollars. That's why I think in Mondragon, the CEO, the head of Mondragon is not a millionaire. even though everyone else in the same position as him in a private firm is. So I think he's far from being a millionaire. So like, but I don't think his editors have a say in that, do they? I don't know.
Perspective to have, right? Like, if I would accept that perspective.
Wait, why is it convenient?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. So everything that you do would be completely fine, right?
Oh, it's this podcast that he calls it. So, but there would be editors. There would be editors in the podcast, though, wouldn't there? As well as people like film crew and all that shit. I don't know much about his podcast, though.
If you moved away from these extremisms, right, and you moved more so to the middle, and you're like, okay, listen, guys, I'm a capitalist, but I believe in socialist systems to be mixed in with the capitalistic systems to create a better society, right, to grab the good of both.
There's an 8 times difference in pay from the bottom earners and the top. Yeah, no, it's I thought it was 1 to 12 across the entire corporation. But the corporation is split up into a bunch of different co-ops. And within those different co-ops, then it's, I think some of them are like 1 to 3. Some of them are higher. Yeah. But from in the entire industry, across the corporation, and there's a maximum on the individual co-ops, but across the entire corporation, the highest earner can't earn more than 12 times as much as the lowest. Which is, you look at the American average, it's like 1 to 300 or some bullshit, right? So yeah. Bit different.
Understand, but the problem is you're completely shitting on capitalism. You're completely eat the rich, anti-capitalist. So if you moved your like ideations or whatever the fuck you call it, more so to I'm a capitalist, but I believe in socialist values. I believe in socialist systems. I believe in more of a mix, right? If you pushed it more to the middle left, it would make sense to exactly what you do. It would make sense to your entire business model. But to sit there and
wait, what? Address why it's conflicting.
Oh, I'm getting there. But to sit there, right, and to sell, right, think about this, okay? Your entire business model, in my opinion, is that of a capitalist business model, right? You sell how the world should be while justifying not implementing those very systems of how the world should be by saying you're just participating in society. That's fine. You can participate in society, but at the very least in the position that you're in, making what you make, in my opinion, the words are not enough. You should be implementing these very systems within your own community to show that these systems work. Do you understand? On a proportional level, if you cannot implement the very systems you preach that should be implemented within America into your community of 30,000.
I'm sorry. When people in his chat keep saying socialism is not poverty, people are being like either bad faith or just fucking brain rotten. This isn't Hasan. This is chat saying this. But like, when you say that, like, it's so obvious, like you're either just bad faith or just completely brain damaged, because it's not like people are telling Hasan that he should be in poverty, right? There's a huge gap between poverty and like being in the top 1% of earners, right? Being in like the fucking opulent top of the fucking hill in the highest room of the tallest tower of your fucking mansion and shit. Like the problem is like, just because what Hasan does is technically not the same as a traditional firm, he's not like exploiting a fucking he's not exploiting a fucking like labor force of 10 to 20,000 people to make his wealth. But what is happening is like, it makes you think, why do we criticize capitalism? What's one of the things that we don't like about the relations of production within capitalism? And you would say one of the outcomes that we don't like about capitalism is opulence side by side with poverty. Because, when you are opulent, when you have like opulent consumer patterns in a particular city or a particular part of the world, like you're making everything else more expensive for everyone, right? When like millionaires buy fucking big houses in like London, or this is a criticism of London, isn't it? Like when Russian billionaires buy up houses in London for like extortionate amounts and shit, like they're making the rent costs for everyone in that town higher. So I would imagine that you would think, it's just because it's technically not capitalism in the labor capital industrial production side sense of things, that doesn't mean you can just exclude what Hasan does from the discussion about that. Because the reason we criticize, or one of the reasons we criticize like the traditional firm, is because of inequality, because it gives a massive amount of discretion to the boss and very little to the workers, so that the pay ratios within those companies are enormous. And then the result of the amount of wealth that's produced on one end is that you get, you know, like mansions and like ridiculous fucking sports cars and like just like insanely disproportionate amounts of spending side by side with people struggling to make ends meet. And you have that societal problem. But if you're living that lifestyle like without the, but you've got like your version of capitalism doesn't include that, then I don't know. What it would make me wonder, like, why are you a socialist then?
Then I would just say you're grandstanding and you're just selling an idea to make money yourself, right? Like
that's great.
To me, that's
a great point. That's a great point. You're
Well, what percentage of his income would be acceptable for him to keep? Do we tie what's acceptable for an avowed socialist to what? Like a multiple? So if we're talking about workers' discretion, right? And I would imagine for the rest of, for the foreseeable future, okay, the people in Hasan's chat, let's just give you a random example, because I haven't thought too much about this. I'm never, like, I'm not going to earn enough money to think about this for a long time, right? Because the thing is that being a socialist streamer and implementing your values as a socialist streamer is unexplored territory. Like, people don't really do that. So one of the things you could say is, if you want to talk about numbers, you could say, well, let's ask everyone in like Hasan's chat if they're socialists, is what do you think a good pay ratio would be for like a worker co-op, right? Because the chances are people in Hasan's chat are not going to be like that anytime soon, right? So maybe, like, instead of asking your employees, which I mean he could ask his employees as well, is maybe like ask his community. Like, how much what do they think the pay ratio should be in society, right? Do they think it should be like, no one should be more than like 8 times the average income? Or no one should be 6 times or 7 times or 8 times or like anything like that? And the rest should be like taxed? Maybe something like that. Well, they could say, and then he can just like do it. And then just whatever left over he has, he can just give to like maybe let the community vote on where the rest of the money goes. It could go to like, it could go to supporting a co-op. It could go to lifting up his employees or his mods or shit, like, yeah, maybe median, yeah, something like, yeah. I don't know. I would like to think that if I was starting to make like an obscene amount of money, like where I don't even have to look at my bank accounts anymore, you know, like where I'm kind of like sorted for, like, you know, I've got like a decent pension fund and all that shit, and I'm not gonna have to worry about like losing the job or going fucking or getting old and shit like that without any money. Then I'd probably reach a stage where I don't think I'm ever gonna need like a multi-million dollar like house or anything like that. But if I have a socialist community, maybe I would just like, what I would maybe do is maybe like cap my own income somewhere. I don't know where. Like, I don't think I'd ever need to earn $1 million a year. Like, that would be weird. Even $500,000 a year just sounds insane to me. I don't know. And then I would just let my community vote on where the rest of it goes. Like, or even proportionate, you know?
You laughed in the face of your last interlocutor on this issue.
Mirutsi, thanks for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely correct on it if your understanding of what I advocate for was sound. And I think this is a normal misunderstanding, and a lot of people have this misunderstanding.
Funnily enough, Hasan's community voted on him buying the Porsche. Yeah, well, wait, what were the other options? Is that true?
standing. I just gave you examples of a relation that I have where I
can't remember all the other cars. Okay. I don't know. Guys, I don't know. Someone can clip this, all right? But if I'm ever earning like hundreds of thousands a year and I'm spending it on like bullshit, just someone keep me in check, okay? Because I have political causes that I care about, right? Like, just someone beat me over the fucking head with it, like if I ever become like that, because I don't believe in that. And it's not just because I'm a socialist, okay? Because I'd imagine like part of the reason that I'm a socialist is because inequality, I don't like it, okay? I don't like opulence. It's cringe, okay? Like, if I had that kind of money to burn, I would rather, like, support something that just, like, anything. I don't know, a fucking, like, people were talking about how, like, trans rights organizations just, like, they don't have any fucking resources. They're, like, these very small, underfunded organizations that can't really advocate for themselves properly, and that's why you get this kind of, like, I don't know, Twitter has to do, like, a lot of the work sometimes. Like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, just fund a fucking pro-trans organization. Or, like, maybe there'll be a co-op in my local community that I can give money, that I can just, like, support as well. Some kind of project, I don't know, or maybe like, maybe 5 fucking co-ops come to me with an idea and I'm like, okay, let the community see what their favorite one is, you know? Shit.
I am producing commodities with the help of others that are involved in the process. And I told you that I utilize, when I am actually producing commodities, utilize the same values that I uphold, okay? Whether it be unionized domestic employees that I am, whenever I'm working on merchandise, or whether it be having a cooperative podcast or having full autonomy and having everyone set their own wages with relation to how much profit or how little profit a certain venture makes. That is as close as you can get to like multiple different formations of trade unionism, an anarcho-syndicalist perspective, and also some level of socialism. So from that perspective, you are objectively incorrect. In most other circumstances, I have no control over it. There's nothing I can do. Like as far as as far as like turning Amazon into a cooperative corporation, I can't do that. It is a massive, almost $1 trillion operation that I have no control over.
Okay. So what you're saying is that for you, the socialism aspects are only...
So does Hasan make money off of his podcast? How does that work? That would be really interesting, actually. Because if his podcast is like the people who work on it all democratically decide on the income, that would be quite interesting. That would be quite cool.
Only the means of production and the workers and the fact that the unionize or not. It's all about the workers. Okay, I have a question then. When you have a podcast, the Freedom Pod,
because one of the things in a co-op as well is the workers can vote out the executives, right? They can vote out the directors. If you're a podcast, if like the podcast is dependent on you in that way, I would imagine just like, I guess they can't vote you out, but they can probably vote like your income down, right? Like, if they think you're earning too much, can they just like vote? Can that happen? If the film crew and the editors don't like what Hasan's doing in the podcast, can they vote like his wage down? Maybe until and then you have to get into like sort of constitutional stuff where the workers can't vote the boss down like to earn less than them, right? Because they still need to, you know, like keep the boss. They still need to keep directors there, and it's a skilled job and shit. So yeah.
How much are the guests and producers paid on that show?
1/3 of the entire revenue.
The guests are paid?
No, the guests are not paid. The guests can come on voluntarily, of course. If they would like to get paid, we would, of course, pay them if there was like a guest fee or anything. But we don't pay guests. We are not interested. We're not interested in having a guest on specifically to make money. I don't think that would be weird. I think
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, but yeah, March gets 1/3 of the entire revenue generated at the moment from
the thing about not paying guests. I've always wondered about that. Because I've been asked to be in a documentary once about like internet politics, and I was paid for that. I wonder why they would pay you to be in a documentary but not on a podcast. Because I guess no one does that, right? Or even paying someone to be on a stream would be fucking weird. But I guess if you're on a stream, then you can stream yourself, and that's you get your end of it from there. Yeah, paying a podcast guest, I'm not really against people not doing that. Yeah.
From the Fear End podcast operation, which you can go and subscribe to at patreon.com/fearend.
Listen, every system that you mentioned in which you apply
payment and exposure. Well, that's the other thing though, isn't it? Because sometimes, what if you're a guest in the podcast, but you're not making that much money, and you've just given a few hours of your time to a show to make content for people. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know. Like, if I ran a podcast, I feel like, again, if I don't know how much money this podcast makes, but I imagine it's quite a lot. If I was making a lot, like a podcast, and I had a lot of money, I feel like I'd want to pay my guests. But I don't like. When I used to play in a fucking band, and I wrote all the parts. So I wrote the bass parts, I wrote the keyboards, I wrote the guitars, I wrote the fucking like the vocal harmonies, and I would teach everyone the parts. I would write fucking sheets for them and shit. So I paid them because they were just doing what I wanted them to, even though they would sometimes do some improv sections and shit. But I don't know, like in general, I always feel like I've always just been like part of this culture where people just like pay each other for things. Like I always feel like I need to. Same with like when community members make fucking emotes for me and shit. Like they don't ask for me to pay them, but I'll like offer anyway, you know? Like just something. Even if I can't offer that much, you know?
Your socialist values too. You are making money from these systems, and that's fine. That's okay. But the areas that I think should be more consistent in are the ones where you take a percentage of your wealth. Now, listen, this argument that your chat gives, or you give, or your loyalists give, so if you're a socialist, you have to be broke on this.
It's also like, fuck, if I ever get to a stage where I can afford it, like I'm paying mods as well, because mods are like, they're kind of like, I am kind of making money off mods. And it's kind of like, not in a very fractional way, right? But if I just started the stream and it was like, I started having like a few thousand viewers, I can't moderate that myself. I couldn't moderate a 1,000+ chat myself. So I would have to. Do you believe salaries should be public? I'm not really a fan of. No, I'm not really a fan of people hiding their salaries, or hiding how much they earn. I think it's good for a society to like be kind of transparent about maybe not salaries, but I think if you know what someone's job is, I don't know. I think it's weird when people hide their income on Patreon and shit like that. I think generally people should be willing to say what they're earning, especially if you're getting donations and shit like that. Fuck. Like, I'll tell you guys everything. Like, if anyone ever has any concerns, I'll tell you how much I'm making on fucking AdSense, how much I'm making on Twitch, how much I'm making on Patreon. Like, my Patreon's already public. Yeah. How much I received in donos. Like, yeah, I'll happily, like, tell you guys that. But, maybe just don't ask every day. Okay? Don't take the piss.
Streets, that example in itself has to be the most delusional, extreme example. Why combat?
I don't know what you're talking about. Explain what you mean. I'm a little slow. I'm a dumb guy. I need you to break it down for me a little bit. I'm serious.
Okay.
What do you mean? I just gave you an example of where I do this, and I want you to the
motivation to demand disclosure individual salaries is from a place of envy or dislike. No, it's not. Have you seen how many times content creators will talk about how like we need your support for this thing, you know, because we're like, you know, we've been demonetized on YouTube, or we're struggling with this and this, and like we need your support. Well, no, fucking, if you're gonna say we need your support, post your fucking earnings. post how much money you've got to spare, and then people can decide for themselves whether or not they need your support. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Explain what you mean.
What I mean is, do you not preach a society where healthcare is free, a society where education is not as backwards as it is in America today, right? These systems, in my opinion, you are in a position where if you truly believe that implementing these systems are a real thing, you are in a position to do something that matches what you say. Otherwise, you're just selling false hope in a business model fashion, which is capitalism, right? Ooh. In a nutshell, to make the money. That's easy to do, but you are in a position to do more. Do you
want me to open up a hospital? Because I think you're.
It's not about opening up a hospital. It's not.
What is it about? Give me specific examples of what I can do, so I can tell you if it's like feasible or not.
Okay, so for example, I know a lot of your vocal minority community argue that the mental health care program is a charity, right? But that program, the part of the charity that it is just the part in America. If we were to implement that program, right? Taxes would pay for the program. In this situation,
absolutely.
Real quick. In this situation, we don't have that luxury, right, of having a tax system to draw a lot of money from the people. So what's replacing it is the charity aspect. To confuse that the system itself as a charity it's not comparable to the excuse of not doing it.
Are you asking me to provide everyone in my community health care?
I'm asking you to follow through with what you say. So to create, create the system, create education as well, right? You could create a system in which you put a percentage aside that you believe the rich should put aside in America, and you implement that on a small scale to show that, listen, guys, this works. If we can do it, so can America. If you can't even do it yourself and you give these excuses.
So you want me to set up like a 501c3 specifically to like pay the hospital bills of every single member in the community that pays into it?
No. It's about creating a system. You understand? Ignore the actual payment of. It's a system that reflects what you preach and delivers it to people who do not have the financial means to get what you believe they have a right to get. Do you understand? That's what it's about. That's what implementing, that's what the actions over the words means when you sit there and you preach what you preach on a daily basis and make millions from it, right? And that's okay to make millions from it. It's okay.
But
there needs to be an implementation of it.
You understand I'm not the government, right?
I don't know what system he's talking about here. Train needs to be a lot more clear.
Like
I just explained the proportional or the comparison between what would be right in this situation. You create a system, and through your own donation, you would be virtually the tax system that would pay for it in a governmental form, right?
Okay, like that's what you're describing. What you're taking the long way to describe is literally, first of all, charity. For the record, insurance on the other hand,
the difference,
or taxes on the other hand. Insurance or taxes, which are two different ways of funding, some form of healthcare or a payment mechanism for healthcare, revolves around people paying into a system and then getting it back in the form of, adequate healthcare, right? This is how it works. You and I are in agreement, I think, as far as how the government should operate this, right? I think you believe in free healthcare, right? I think.
I do, yes.
Okay,
healthcare is, I believe healthcare is a right?
So,
I believe
absolutely.
Our education system is completely backwards. I believe we should be encouraging students to go to school. We should be encouraging students. I believe the new baseline should be college. This idea where we're pushing that college is unnecessary, you can't apply this or that, I think is ridiculous. But I do think it stems from our backwards financial education system.
So right? how can I do what you're describing without building a hospital or building a 501c3?
I just explained, right? For example, the program I have, right? It's easy to compare the two and say, oh, it's a charity. No. The charity part of it is replacing the tax system in which the government would pay for that system. Since we don't have that tax system, taking a percentage of what you make, like you preach should happen for the rich, right? And putting it into that system, right? So what you make, a percentage of what you make going into that system would be replicating what the government has for taxes, right? We'd be taking it out of our pockets monthly, right? For each respective community across Twitch, across YouTube, across Kick, across wherever.
Yeah, you're saying you want to.
Wait, what does he mean? Does he mean like mutual aid? Oh God, he could just take like, there must be so if you're like a socialist, it would be take a percentage of what you earn that you think the rich should be taxed and put it towards a co-op, right? Just Maybe one co-op, and you don't even need to be the sole founder of it. You can just contribute to it, right? So even like when wealthy fucking philanthropists have these projects in mind, they call themselves philanthropists, but like they'll say that they want to revitalize the community and build like a fucking shopping center or some bullshit. Like they always do this, like in the UK. Then they'll just pledge like, I don't know, 50 million towards this project, but then the government will pay the rest. So they just offer this project to the council or to the government, but they just pledge part of it, and then people can stack onto it afterwards. But the project never would have happened if it weren't for that original pledge, right? So if you can pledge towards a co-op or just contribute towards a co-op, and then like the other people who work for it can do their buy-in, or maybe like you can I don't think it would cost that much to do that. Or even just find it. Like I think some co-ops will apply for grants, I think, or even loans, and you can just be like a guarantor for that kind of shit. Or you can yeah, like a grant project is a thing as well, yeah. But the difference between that and charity is that you're building up like a separate structure, right? So if you're wanting to say for like co-ops, which I think is probably the best argument, is if you help people set up a co-op, or even with a grant scheme through your audience, then you're not just doing charity at that point. What you're doing is you are promoting an alternative model. You're saying like, look, there's a co-op here. Look at its performance over like 5 years. This is a better way to do things. This is like we got like worker satisfaction and shit like that. Like, yeah, you're setting up an alternative power structure, which is like just because it's not changing the world and shit. Like it's doing something. It's more than what you'd be doing right now. Getting co-op started costs about 50K. Yeah. Or even if you're doing mutual aid, you can fund like loads of mutual aid projects. I don't know how it works exactly, but like I know in parts of I think it's in the UK, like squats are a big thing where people will find like a piece of land or a property that's not being used. And if they can use squatters' rights, then they can actually build like quite a lot out of it. Or it used to be the case anyway. But that's like if you're going down like the more ANCOM route, or the anarchist route, and you want to build like a mutual aid thing. That's the whole point. Like the whole argument there is of like the mutual aid idea, which I think co-ops can kind of fall under, is that you build up an alternative power structure to capitalism. So in the case of building a co-op, it's like, well, somewhere that an employee can go to work that's not a traditional firm. And the idea is that enough people do it so that those structures become big enough that they start to pose as a serious alternative to the existing system.
You want to start.
Why doesn't Train do this stuff if he believes in the system? Because Train is a capitalist. Train believes that society, or Train believes in if it's your money, it doesn't matter how you earned it. But if you earned it within the law, do what the fuck you want with it. That's probably what Train believes. Train probably doesn't believe that he should be getting taxed more, or like, that's why it's different, because Train doesn't, I don't think Train's trying to build an alternative society, whereas Hasan is. And like, the problem is, if you want to build socialism, okay? If you want to build socialism in the United States of all places, there are two ways it's going to happen. And it's really only one way, okay? One way it could happen, which it never will, is through a fucking armed revolution, okay? Which, you know, if you try that, the right are going to do a better job than you will, and you'll fucking all die. Like, okay, good luck. Or there's a second one, which is that you try to advocate for alternatives within the system. So you support like social democratic policies or politicians so that they can start to take the things like healthcare further away from the market and more into public hands, things like that. And then the other thing you do is that you build alternative structures, like whether it's like a mutual aid structure, or like you try in the socialist thing, it would be like to start a co-op, in the hope that eventually it catches on, more people do it, to a point where co-ops are starting to present themselves as viable alternatives on the macro scale to traditional firms. Maybe they eventually start to get preferential loans from governments because they perform better. Like that kind of thing. And the latter way is the only realistic way, right? It's like if you were, I don't know, imagine if you were a capitalist living under a feudal system, and you were a lord, you were making loads of money, right? And someone asked you in the year fucking 1350, Jesus, 1350, fucking hell. That's like, not the race stat, Jesus Christ. 1450, fuck. Let's say it was like, let's say it was like 1450, okay? You're like somewhere in Europe or some bullshit. And you're like, okay, I want to be a capitalist. Well, what do you do? Well, I don't know. We can't have the Industrial Revolution, so I guess like I'll just keep my fucking lord's money, whatever the fuck you call it, and just exploit my peasants and whatever. Or you could like put money towards whatever capitalistic things there are going on at the time. So I think in the sort of like 14, 15, 1600s, there were some workshops where people could go in where that did work in a way that you just kind of hired people in like a wage labor way. Or I think more often was like merchants. A very capitalistic thing you could do in the medieval times was you could just like put money on a fucking boat, let it go away, and just hope that it came back with more money. So you would do that. You wouldn't expect a revolution anytime soon because it wasn't going to happen. You didn't just stay within the feudalist system and say, well, I'm only going to preach capitalism and not actually do anything about it. Like, no, you think about what you can do with the cards that are given to you. So, yeah.
If I'm not misunderstanding, you want to start like a healthcare structure for Twitch watchers that us Twitch streamers put together.
Yes.
Yes, us Twitch streamers, we put together a healthcare structure. Okay.
Is that socialism though? Is that
that's not? No, it's not. It's just, okay. But so it is. But it is nice. It's not socialism. That's not socialism. The wealth. But it is nice. It is nice. It's a good idea. It's a charity.
Distributing the wealth of the rich into systems that give healthcare to the poor is exactly the values of socialism, is it not?
Yes, you're right. But by your logic, then, you know, charities would be considered socialism, but it's not.
No.
And also, if charities eradicated the existence of these problems, if charities eradicated the existence of these problems, then in the United States of America, it's one of the most charitable countries on the planet. We would literally not have a single person die because they can't get their diabetes medication, which is why you have to advocate for the government, as I do all the time, not only put pressure on congresspersons, but like literally direct.
Hasan literally grew on Twitch saying we need a streamer union, and he didn't do that either. What would a streamer union advocate for? Like 70-30 instead of 50-50? Bro, that would be cool. That would be based. Changes to TOS, yeah. Unbanning people who have been unfairly banned. Hey, fuck. Okay.
Directly talk to them from time to time as well, and utilize my community to go vote a certain way. I am technically trying to do that in a grander scale. It's unfortunately very difficult to accomplish.
So let me ask you this. If the socialist himself cannot find a way to distribute a percentage of his wealth, who do you expect to do it? The fucking capitalist sitting at the top? It needs to start somewhere. No, it needs to start somewhere, right? No, if we can't do it on this level,
Train can nail it. So I don't think he's going to do it because, again, he's not a fucking political person. Okay, he probably doesn't even know what socialism is, which is going to be frustrating. And Hasan is going to conveniently use the most narrow definition of socialism just to avoid any of kind of responsibility. But like, couldn't you just Train could nail him down really hard here by just saying, "Why are you a socialist?" Like, what values are you fulfilling by being a socialist? Because you're not like a socialist for no fucking reason, right? You're a socialist probably because you think it will make the world a better place. Well, why will it make the world a better place? Well, because you think it'll be more equitable. There'll be less wealth inequality. There'll be less fucking environmental damage, right? There'll be less people going sick without any healthcare. And then it's like, okay, well, why don't you use your platform to get those things? Doesn't need to be socialism, right? You can get most of the things you want from socialism, you can probably push forward a little bit within capitalism as well. That's why co-ops work within capitalism. That's why universal healthcare works within capital, and you can do those things and push them because you're still pushing the world more in the direction of what you want. But I think there's this very convenient thing that people do, which is like, it's very all or nothing, right? Oh, you want me to build a hospital? Like, no, obviously not, you fucking... But some kind of like insurance thing, yeah. Because one of the problems with capitalism, like, okay, why do we not like the capitalist healthcare system? Because it doesn't deliver healthcare to people who need it. Okay, well, why don't you contribute to giving people healthcare who need it? That's like, but the problem is, as soon as you realize why someone's a socialist, that's when things get fucked. Because if you make it sound like your moral structure, just like your belief system, just the bottom of it is the socialism, like that's the basis, then you get a jail free card. Yeah.
How are you expecting a country of 335 million to implement it on that scale? We need to find a way to proportionally scale it within our business models, whether it's the charity aspect, replacing or replicating the tax system. You understand? Like, the action needs
you do realize countries have socialized healthcare, right? Like the UK has the NHS system. So like literally just pointing to that should be able to have a wake up moment for the minds of millions of Americans. But it still hasn't worked. So technically what you're saying is well intentioned. And I love that you're saying this, but it demonstrably doesn't work. I point to actively working socialized healthcare structures on a daily basis, and yet I have not been able to, individually at least, move the needle on getting Americans to get on board with Medicare for all. Neither did Bernie Sanders, again, unfortunately.
We'll agree to disagree on that. And next topic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Wait, I don't know what the disagreement there is, though. I gave you an example of socialized healthcare working in a larger system and pointing to that. And yet that still doesn't get Americans on board in certain instances. But the reality is, even if all Americans were on board, okay, even if every single American, like the abortion ban, for example, were on board, 75% of Americans thought abortion should be protected. And yet the Supreme Court decided against it. Why? Because that's just how it is. When the rich and powerful get together and build billions of dollars worth of dark money funded super PACs and lobbying groups, they get their way regardless of what the Americans think or feel. And the same goes for healthcare as well, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry with a lot of people making money that you and I would look at and go, holy shit, that is a lot more money than we make.
Sorry, if anyone wants a really good example of mutual aid, and if you want to promote this as well, fuck, like this could have been so good during the pandemic. During the pandemic, fucking Celery was going to do a thing about this. I don't think they ever did, though. Was about how mutual aid is the role that mutual aid played in COVID. In the UK, I'm pretty sure like thousands of mutual aid groups started appearing during the pandemic because the whole purpose of them was there were these mutual aid groups that were dissatisfied with the performance of the government, that they set up these groups that could offer community support to people who were self-isolating. So like getting goods to their getting goods delivered, because like the delivery service was like 3 weeks or 4 weeks in advance that you had to book for to order and shit like that. So getting goods delivered, helping people with like distributing COVID information, like like lots of different kitchens and things like that for people who were struggling with their income. 3D printing masks, so there was a lot of things that were going on during COVID with mutual aid, and a lot of those mutual aid groups actually still exist. And now they're just helping with people who are like homeless or hungry or whatever the fuck. So, God, like during the pandemic, if you were a socialist with spare change and you could have like supported mutual aid groups, they would still exist. And the whole point in a mutual aid group is that they're supposed to be there as alternatives to what the system can offer, right? Because people would say that welfare benefits are insufficient for helping people who are struggling. Well, that's what mutual aid comes into. Like people can rely on mutual aid groups instead. Actually, also, even something as simple as like Food Not Bombs. So what Food Not Bombs will do, at least where I live, is when there's a protest going on, or or some kind of rally or whatever, like Food Not Bombs will set up a stall. They'll dumpster dive. They'll get food that's like been binned and it's like 1 or 2 days out of date, but still perfectly fine. And they will cook these like huge fucking pots of food, and they will distribute it at a protest. And the whole idea there is like, well, if you want to go out and protest for the day, you might not have the money to go and eat out that day. So like Food Not Bombs will be there so that people who are protesting can get fed for free. That's again like, that's not just charity though. That's providing an alternative for like, if you're out in the high street protesting, you don't need to spend fucking 10 or 15 pounds or however much it is these days on a fucking meal out in town. You can just go to the Food Not Bomb stall, and get fed there. That's like a really good example of it. So it doesn't like, there are systems like this all over the place that people could support, but I guess maybe they just don't know about it, or they just don't care enough, I guess, and like the luxury is more important. Fuck.
That is the unfortunate reality here. That's what we're going up against. So pointing to an example of like a charity individually working within my community or within Twitch, okay? That's a very nice thing to do.
It's a system.
And we can talk more about it.
Is disingenuously being presented.
It's not disingenuous. There's nothing wrong with charity.
What he says though is that
oh god, Trey needs his term. He needs to be talking. I think he's talking about mutual aid, but
he says that inherently that's not the socialism that he's supposed to uphold, like you think he is. When he
so what socialism is, so the socialism is okay,
labor. His socialism that he pushes. So
the socialism that requires him to give no percentage of his money and only requires him to preach is the socialism he's for. You don't find that convenient?
I do pay a decent amount of taxes in California, but that's not but I don't consider that to be social.
We legally
like
have
Keynesian
to.
economics that's wealth distribution, and I think that's adequate, and I think that's apt. I wish that billions of it wasn't used on fucking finding new and creative ways to like blow brown children in fucking school buses in Yemen, but unfortunately, that is what our American government has decided to spend it on. That is an unfortunate byproduct of living here. But even the meager amount of that goes back into funding the roads, funding the school system, I'm happy with and I'm comfortable with, and I talk about it during tax season all the fucking time. But if you think that like charity is socialism, then
I didn't say charity is socialism. I was referring to a system that we create as a streamer. And the charity aspect, right, which provides that system, would be the way we replicate the tax system, right? Within America, the government has a tax system which they would funnel their money into programs for the people who can't afford it. It would give people access to healthcare. It would cover certain educational costs to push education through. What I'm saying is we create a system, and since we do not have a tax system,
we can swapping use the word charity for system, by the way. Like that's what you're doing, which is fine. Again, I have no issues with charity. I'm showing you the
difference, right? It's about creating the system, right? And the charity would be the pool of money used to fund the system that gives healthcare to your community to show that it works. What you preach works. You can take from the rich and provide for the poor, provide for the people who don't have the financial
real charities at the top of the hour,
security or the luxury.
Where there's a 3-minute ad
in
break.
America, which is so.
And if you no longer want to see those ads, you can get gifted a sub.
Healthcare, right? To have basic educational costs covered. To push that, we need that kind of stuff, right? So I believe we need to act instead of just preach. Otherwise, where does it start? Where does the chain reaction start?
This is a misunderstanding. I think he kind of agrees with you, right? But at the same time, when you say to uphold socialism, in his view, he does, because socialism is the means of production and the workers and the labor, right? That is his socialism. So even though he agrees with you, he still doesn't agree with the fact that you think that this is socialism when he said what his socialism is. Right, so that's what this disconnect is. So I do agree that there's a double effect.
Because what he's talking about is just charity, which is great. I love that as a concept, and I'm on board with it. It's just not. It's demonstrably failed to improve. That doesn't stop me from giving money to charities. All right, obviously, that doesn't stop me from funding money or doing fundraising for charities and also directly donating. But if what he was talking about as far as charities actually solve the issues.
Listen,
the United States of America would have no healthcare issues.
To help you understand this, okay, take a look at my mental health care program, okay? Because you keep saying charity, okay? So yes, the money goes into the charity to hold, right? What I'm referring to is the system that's created, right? The viewer can now, that does not have access to healthcare, can now have a way through me taking a percentage of my wealth and putting it as a funding source to free healthcare. This is this, ignore the charity part of it. It's the system. This is what I mean by actions over words.
Yes, you're right. If everyone was paying into, but in the form of taxes, if everyone was paying into the government and the government was like, we're going to take some of this money and we're going to build hospitals, we're going to build rural hospitals, which is a major problem as well in America. And we're going to make sure that everyone can get health care for free when they go into a hospital. That would be socialized medicine. It would not be socialism. It would be a form of socialization.
So couldn't you implement what you preach into a system like that for your community to have access?
Yeah, but Hasan's not just a socialist then, is he? If you think socialized medicine isn't socialism, he probably still advocates for it though, right?
To things that they don't have access to because of their financial means, right? Because of their financial situations. That's what I'm asking. It's easy to preach, I think
that is doable, certainly. It's not impossible. The problem in that situation would be that it would require me dropping everything I normally do and basically learn an entirely new set of skills. It would not be a system. It would, again, just be a charity, that a 501c3 that I would have to set up. And I, unfortunately, am a dumbass who doesn't know anything about setting up a 501c3, which is why I usually...
I think he's worried that, like, if he ever donated to a mutual aid project, they would just scam him because they're not regulated. That's why they're different from charities. Ooh.
Just like you did, work with other 501c3s that are pre-existing in this regard. But again, I have raised and also funded more than $500,000 last year, which is a marginal amount in comparison to how charitable you are. You're a very charitable person. And this year so far, almost like $2 million, if I'm not mistaken, to various different causes. I don't think that that is socialism. I just want to make that clear. I don't think that that's socialism. I do it because I think it's the right thing to do. I'm a very fortunate person, and I think the capacity to be able to give back is a good thing. That's why I do it. But even by that metric of, like, if you think that building these sorts of systems is socialism, then I guess I'm a relatively socialist person.
I think it's for each individual, right? It's a value within themselves, right? So if you're making X and X amount of dollars, I believe because of the fortunate situation both you and I are in, I do believe in higher taxes for us. I do believe in both of us taking a percentage of our wealth. And
Hasan is right, though. Charity is cope for people who don't want to be forced into pay a social benefit system. The problem is that the charity, it's also a cop-out because so much of what people can do with their money as socialists or anarchists overlaps with charity, right? Could you say, like, I'm not going to fund a co-op because it's technically charity? Like, no, there's overlap, right? Like, a lot of what mutual aid groups do as well, because they exist as like alternative structures where the system fails, they often fulfill the same role that a charity would have, right? So after, like, Hurricane Katrina, where mutual aid groups were like, I think mutual aid groups opened medical clinics, didn't they? And they, because people volunteered to give medical attention where people couldn't get it through the system. And they also did things like, they helped, like, collectively get rid of debris, or like planting trees where they'd fallen down, or fucking helping to fix people's roofs and shit like that. But that was all like that was technically a mutual aid group because they weren't registered as charities. They were just people helping each other through an organized structure. Like, but that also was like a lot of the work that a charity would do.
Putting it into systems, right, that can distribute it to people and give them the baseline, what I believe to be a right, which is healthcare, education systems that pay for their schooling based on, let's say, a hardworking students or whatever the hell that is, GPA, whatever you want to measure that by, right? That's what I believe. So what I'm saying is, I do think, ignore the charity aspect. I'm referring to the systems. The charity is just a funding pool in this comparison, right? I believe we should not just talk it, we should act on it, right? So we should take a percentage of our wealth, whether it's 20%, 30%, 10%, whatever it may be, and put it towards systems that give what we believe to be a right to the people that don't have access to these things that I believe should be a right, right?
I think the system you're describing is a 501c3 though, right? Like that's...
Well, in this situation, the 501c3 would be provided, and all you would have to do, right? So let's hypothetically say for this mental health care program, right? Wouldn't you say, if you don't want to create that this is it's right there, right? It's a system you believe in for your community, right? So why would
Hasan doesn't agree with? I'm just
okay, go ahead.
Hasan doesn't. Even though he thinks these things are good and he wants to do those things, and sometimes he hasn't, or maybe he will in the future, he still doesn't view that as a fundamental socialism.
Wait, first of all, I do those things. Let's make it clear. I think I do a decent job at doing those things.
Yeah, but I still think he doesn't view that as the fundamentals of socialism, and that's not what he preaches.
Yes.
Therefore, he doesn't feel like you've gotten him on the dude, you haven't donated this much. Well.
Damn, XTC is a good moderator.
Hasan doesn't feel like you got him on not doing what he preaches, when this is not what he preaches in that regard to socialism. That's what he feels like.
So you're picking and choosing what aspects of socialism apply based on what you have to act on, what you don't. I'm confused.
I mean, ask Hasan.
So we're cherry picking what parts of socialism we want to preach, and those are dependent on which ones actually require you to distribute a percentage of your wealth into systems that distribute it to the people that are less. It seems like we're cherry picking what we have to act on and what we don't. It just seems very convenient to me.
I think that the fundamental disagreement here is that charitable donations is socialism, is like kind of your perspective here. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You can correct me, but that's all I've heard from you. As far as like, maybe you don't say charitable donations, you say systems. But that's kind of what you're talking about, and that is fundamentally not true, which is fine. It's still fine, though. You're right. I think it's a good thing to, again, uphold charity and try to do your very best to help others who are less fortunate. But if you're asking me as someone who like at least describes the concept of what socialism is, that is not true. What you're describing is just fundamentally just a 501c3.
I feel like there's a disconnect for you and probably with others as well in what I'm referring to, okay? And the only reason, okay, let's take my mental health care program as an example of this, since it's the only thing I can show you in this regard. That's on Twitch. That can help you understand this, okay? So ignore the charity aspect of what's going on there, okay? That's there. The reason I had to work with them is because obviously as a streamer, right, we don't pay some sort of streamer tax within Twitch where we can funnel that money and put it towards systems we believe in, right? So ignore the charity aspect. Instead, compare it in this system, right? When I say system, I'm referring to the system where I take a percentage of my wealth monthly, put it into, let's say, a pot, and from there, access is given to viewers in my community that do not have access to mental health care, right? That charity is only replicating what the U.S. government, it's proportionally replicating, right?
Yes,
what the U.S. government has for a tax system.
What you're describing, yes, exactly. The main difference is voluntary donations versus taxes, right? And you're right.
That's the only way that we, right, proportionally as streamers.
You have to understand you're describing a charity when you keep explaining it, though. Like that's
it's
the
a charity
that you work with, RAD, right? You work with RAD.
Yes.
Is a pre-established 501c3. It's a charity. So you are giving money to RAD, which is a wonderful thing. Okay, it's great.
It's a separate program, right?
Okay, it's a separate program. Sure.
It's a separate program within RAD. I'm using RAD to replicate what it would be in America using their tax systems to pay for mental health care. Do you understand?
You're not wrong. That is actually a very decent way. That is a very decent way to describe. That is a very decent way to try to describe socialized healthcare and why it's ethical and why it's the right thing to do. I agree with you if that is what you're saying as far as like socialized healthcare. It's still not socialism So if you're asking me what socialism is, or if it conflicts with my values,
yeah, this is very circular. Oh God, try a different fucking point.
Is that I haven't like set up a 501c3.
We need debate tactics.
Personally,
it's not about setting up. It's about taking a percentage of your wealth, like you preach, the rich should do, and doing it yourself and implementing it, right? So if
like leading by
you
example,
understand, so do you do that? Do you take a percentage, 10, 20, 30% of your wealth and put it towards systems that give free healthcare to the people? Or are you just relying on the tax systems of America as your distributive wealth process?
I definitely do donate a lot more than just what the taxes are. Absolutely. I do. I don't know what percentage of my overall wealth that is, but yes, I absolutely do. Regardless, though, I don't think that is socialism. I do it not because it's socialism. I don't do it because I want to make like...
I think you're misunderstanding my point, right?
Look, my point is this. Billionaires have something called the Billionaire's Pledge. I don't know if you've ever heard about this. It's actually a very interesting concept, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
So, like the Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, numerous other billionaires, some of the wealthiest people on the planet have joined what they call, I believe, the Giving Pledge, which is, it's a, hold on, I'm going to pull it up real quick so I don't give you any false information here.
Why don't we start the Millionaire's Pledge and we play it on Twitch? And
yeah, no, hold on. Well, I'm going to talk about how fraudulent it is in a second.
Oh, shit.
The Giving Pledge is a commitment to philanthropy. The Giving Pledge is a promise by the world's wealthiest individuals and families to dedicate the majority of their wealth to charitable causes. Now, the issue is that this is just simply a PR move for them. They do this because they set up their own charitable donations, their charitable contributions, and they put all of their stock options into that charity in an effort to avoid taxes. Right? That is the main reason why they do this. That way they can look like they're giving back while, you know, buying from or buying whatever the fuck from they want from the pool of funds, utilizing it as a tax cut. It turns into a non-taxable entity. Right? Even if this wasn't, even if this was like an earnest thing, an honest thing, it still would not make Bill Gates, for example, funds malaria research, who has funded vaccine research, as a matter of fact, as well.
Okay.
This would not make Bill Gates a socialist.
Okay, Hasan, I think I got you again. He feels like if you were to englobe what socialism as a whole, he wants you to emulate and enforce that version of socialism on a smaller scale, in order to create and show that this is what you uphold, right? And instead of what he thinks, you're pushing more radicalized ideas when you're kind of like not doing that, you know, all the way out there. You're kind of just staying a little bit in the middle in terms of your actions. That's what he thinks. From my understanding, this is what Trent thinks. Generally.
Yes. He has a different opinion on what praxis is. This is a term we use in leftist communities.
Praxis.
And he thinks that this is what praxis is, like socialism in action. I fundamentally disagree. And yet I still actually do engage in the thing that he's talking about.
Me too. I just don't tell anybody about it because it's useless.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't used to tell people about it either. But obviously a lot of people kept saying, much like Train, Hasan, you're fake. You don't practice what you preach. You don't give back to people, which is a false understanding of socialism in general. So I did start telling people about it. And now they say I do it for clout, which, of course, I always knew it was going to be a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. So I just do whatever the fuck I think is the right thing to do. And I keep my fucking head down and do it.
Right. So
even in your chat, your entire chat is capping right now. Your entire chat. Like there will never be charitability to anything. And I don't even expect it. Like it's just...
No, this ain't kept to me because I said I do charitable stuff and whatever because in terms of education because I own my own shit, but I don't. Dude, it's freaking lame. Whether they think that I do or not, or they accept it and they validate the amounts or not, I think it's useless to talk about it. I just do it because it helps, and I'm sure down the line, somebody that was helped by one of these things when they're balling out and they're millionaire, they will do the same thing, and there's no effect. I truly believe that giving back into systems like healthcare, like education, when somebody is a recipient of these things, when they ball out, there's a good chance they'll do the same because this resonates hard with them. It creates a domino effect, and the more people do, the more it resonates and the more it grows. That's how it is. That's my perspective. That's my view on it. But I still don't think that's socialism, though.
It's not. I don't think you're you would say you're a socialist, or you would be a socialist for doing that. I don't think Train is a socialist for doing the charitable donations to RAD.
The system itself would be a socialist one. Do you understand? The system, the idea of it, not the actual donation.
Well, I also personally
gave
you an example. I gave you an example of like a commodity production or creating something new and different that in the form of like the podcast, it is a cooperative style governance, I guess.
Would you agree? Everything you've mentioned that you do, that you believe is aligned with your ideas of socialism, you profit from. Don't you think that's yes. Just a little distant?
Yes. No, that's literally okay. See, this is perfect. Thank you for saying this. This is literally the fundamental misunderstanding. Socialism is not about doing things because you're a nice guy. Socialism is just about who is producing the shit and how much more freedom they get.
There is a difference in profiting more from the preaching or the ideas of the socialism, right? It's not like you're making a business, right? And then you're getting
that is a business. What I described to you is a business. What I described to you is a cooperative formation of a corporation.
A percentage of everything that you do in the name of socialism should go towards systems?
Train, you're not understanding. Train, you're not understanding what I'm saying. Train,
okay, continue.
You literally there are many different ways of democratizing a workplace or democratizing an economic organization of society. One of those, is a cooperative corporation. Okay, that is precisely why my producer, who is producing the labor, who's creating part of the podcast, who sets up the Patreon and whatnot, and sets up the cameras, for example, that person is getting 1/3 of the overall revenue. Okay. That is inherently a socialist formation. He also has autonomy. He also gets to say, I want to do it on this day. I want to do it on that day. Okay, I want to do the podcast on this day. These are things that we democratically decide. Now, this is a cooperative corporation. That is actually closer to like what is literally socialism, at least in a corporation, a socialist organization of the economy within the corporation, than anything else that you have described. That would be one form or one aspect of democratization of the workplace. Okay? That is actually what you want out of me. I'm already doing that. But if you're talking about like setting up a system or whatever you want to call a charity.
How does that work with Twitch then? So you bring up the podcast. How does that work with Twitch, right? Let's say hypothetically you're making $6 to $10 million from an ad-heavy deal, right? Which if you show that deal, which you can't because you're binded by a contract.
Do you think I should pay my viewers for watching me?
Not Twitch? Pay your. What? I'm referring to you bring the podcast up as 1/3. Are you paying, right, a percentage or something proportional to the millions that you're making off Twitch, right? Is that something you're doing as a socialist, right? Does that carry over to your Twitch? So sure, I believe you for your podcast.
To who? To what?
To editors, to moderators.
Yes.
So you're paying moderators or a head of moderation?
No, not editors and not moderators. I do have a compensation mechanism for my moderators. Okay. It is not one that I often publicize, specifically because I don't want moderators to come on board exclusively because... Right. To what?
To that carry over to your or something up as 1/3. Are you paying, right? I'm referring to you bring the podcast up as 1/3. Are you paying, right, a percentage or something proportional to the millions that you're making off Twitch, right? Is that something you're doing as a socialist, right? Does that carry over to your Twitch? So sure, I believe you for your podcast.
To who? To what?
To editors, to moderators?
Yes.
So you're paying moderators or a head of moderation?
No, not editors and not moderators. I do have a compensation mechanism for my moderators. Okay. It is not one that I often publicize, specifically because I don't want moderators to come on board exclusively because they want to...
Oh, no. So who's involved in the co-op fucking structure then? What? Do you pay your moderators? No, because I don't make any fucking money. Like I make barely enough to like just get by. If I was making like 6 figures. Yeah, fucking right. I'm gonna start paying my moderators. Like, yeah, shit. What? Even actually, like my moderators, so sometimes we'll do like Discord meetups and shit like that. And like whenever I can, if we do Discord meetups and my Discord mods will fucking tell you, it's like, yeah, I'll pay for quite a lot. But like, but I'll do what I can. But yeah, right now I'm only paying my mods and exposure, right? But
you know, uses as a job opportunity. There is a compensation mechanism if, you know, but I don't like talking about it specifically because, like I said, I want moderators to be a part of the community and not necessarily working and not necessarily doing it as labor, which is most of the reason why I try to, as best as I can, maintain all of the other avenues of moderation.
Yeah, but why the, like, okay, here's a question then. Hasan, would Hasan be able to do his job just as effectively with no mods? Because if the mods are helping him do his job, then the mods are working, right?
On my own, whether it be running ads, which, by the way, I should be running at least a middle of the hour ad break. And
yeah, he's saying he pays them, but he keeps it on the down low. Yeah. Like I don't even like going down this line. Because the problem is like maybe trying to figure out like a streamer cooperative is probably a bit odd. That's probably, you take a bit of creativity in there. Like how much discretion do you want to give your mods and your editor over like the general direction of you as a stream? Like I'd probably say that if you want to be more of a socialist, then they should probably have a bit more input than you would typically expect from a streamer. I don't know. I think maybe I would maybe focus more on just the amount of money that Hasan makes from contributions from his community is like funneling that towards what he would consider advancing socialism. Could Hasan's mods vote to force him to stream more if revenue is down? No, but like if you were a bunch of mods and you've been around for a long time, I think maybe you could probably have some say over how much you get paid. Yeah. But then you would also have to have some kind of like constitution to make sure that, or to give yourself more votes as the streamer, because I guess you probably don't want a bunch of mods who have stuck around for a few years to like vote themselves to earn more than you do, which would be a bit weird, you know? Like you can have limitations of that. Again, like co-ops are like that as well. Like you can vote on pay ratios in a co-op, but you can't vote so that the shelf stacker earns more than the fucking director. That's insane. Like, yeah, you can only go so far with it. There are still checks and balances. It's not like absolute democracy, you know? But I would say the value doesn't all revolve around Hasan, because again, like the community, the chat is part of the community, which is part of the reason people watch, right? And mods are part of ensuring that that is a safe place and all that shit. So yeah, mods are contributing something. Like they do make your job easier as a streamer.
Let's stop. Everyone, both of you are on your
deals. Hold on. As far as editors goes, yes, of course, I pay editors.
Sure, but he already funnels a big percent of his earning towards tax. Yeah, but if it's just taxes and charity, then he's no different from like just a random like wealthy guy within capitalism, right? Like a wealthy fucking artist who's pro-capitalism. There's not much difference there, right? Whereas I think if you're going to be a socialist, I think you'd maybe want to, and you have that much money, you'd probably want to do something that differentiates you from the average like capitalist, right? Like, I don't know.
Editors directly. I pay editors directly out of wait.
Because otherwise you're saying like, otherwise you're going down the line of, okay, should there be no difference between a capitalist and a socialist? Like if you're a capitalist and you're a socialist, it's okay for you two to live the exact same lifestyle, right? He's exactly that. Some dipshit that locked himself.
I don't know what he's. I don't know why he's saying.
I was saying play your minute ad and I'll juice up.
No. Anyway. Listen. As far as payment structures goes for my editors, they are the ones who make their pay. In many instances, they're making more. They are the ones who I routinely have a conversation with, where they're the ones who dictate what their pay is. I'm routinely paying them more than even more than the value that they're actually generating for the videos that they're creating.
You know, it's a really simple thing that if you're a socialist, right, make it that a percentage of your income is like put towards grants for startup co-ops. That's it. Just like a grant. That's easy enough, isn't it? That's like within the. It's like it's not too complicated. You could, or even grants for like mutual aid projects as well, because like mutual aid orgs need money. I mean, I don't know how much Hasan gives a fuck about mutual aid, because it's more of like an anarchist thing than a socialist thing. But again, there's quite a lot of overlap. And then your community knows that they're involved in that as well. Like, so when you give us gifted sub, you're not just contributing to Hasan's fucking mansion. You're also contributing towards like advancing socialism, which is pretty cool, right? But then it's like charity, it's a targeted charity. No, because it's an alternative power structure. If I'm going to say fucking structure now, no, because a co-op is something like, what do you want as a socialist, okay? What you want is workers to have more discretion, right? You want workers to have more discretion over the means of production. You want them to have more discretion over what happens to the surplus value, right? You want them to be more in charge of like the general direction of the company. You want to erode that gap between labor and capital. Well, a worker co-op does that more effectively than any other form that we know about, I would say. So yeah, it's like, if that charity, but you can, it's like, it's not like charity immediately ends where advancing socialism begins. There's overlap there. You can say it's charitable, it's a form of charity, but it's not quite it's also socialism, right? I don't think Hasan would say that a co-op isn't like at least advancing socialism. And if you have the power to make sure that they're at least to offer a few more of those to the world, or to support ones that already exist, why not? Socialism should be directed towards all citizens. No. Well, how do you? Okay, then what you're saying is it's all or nothing, right? If it doesn't affect all citizens, there's no point in anyone doing any of it. No. If you want like co-ops to be a societal norm, well, you're a celebrity figure, right? You're a huge streamer. If you're supporting a co-op fund, and if those co-ops actually turn out to be successful, because one of the arguments for co-ops as well is that they provide more worker satisfaction and all that shit to other than traditional firms do. They're even more equitable, and often actually workers in co-ops earn more than the average worker in a traditional firm because it's more evenly distributed. Then you can promote that as well, and then you might encourage other people to do the same thing. You do what you can, like. No, I'm saying tax is okay. I'm saying tax should be equally applied. I'm saying taxes should be used in a socialist fashion. Yeah, I don't know what that has to, like, Hasan can't, like, I mean, he can donate money to the government if he wants, but if you've got all that spare change, like, I'm just thinking, like, let's say there are two doors, okay? Let's say you're a fucking streamer and you've got, like, I feel like I've got $3 million in spare change, right? And there are two doors. And one of them is fucking a yacht, and the other one is supporting co-ops. If you were a socialist, why the fuck would you not go through the co-op door? Like, I don't understand that. Because let's face it, although opulence isn't necessarily capitalism, it's definitely got a bit more to do with capitalism than it does to do with socialism, right? One of the reasons I would imagine people become socialists is because they see what that unequal distribution of wealth in a company does, and they're kind of like, and they think it's kind of gross, and they probably want like the world to be a little bit more equitable, or more equal.
And the only way I can subsidize that is because I'm making money off of Twitch. So in a way, yes, I am utilizing Twitch revenue to pay some of my editors.
But not your moderators, to the same percentage as, let's say, the podcast to your Twitch, right? So your main income channel is the biggest one, right? And that's the one that's exempt from the from the proportion.
Because not only that, but the reason why this works the way that it does is because there are certain aspects that I want to maintain as far as autonomy goes, as far as the freedom, as far as like no demands made of anybody, because no one is as big as a freak as myself who's gonna fucking sit there for 8 to 10 hours and watch shit. Okay, that is an unreasonable demand to make from people. I don't make that demand from my viewers, and that is precisely the reason.
It would be a really interesting poll, actually, because you're saying it there, Def Meta, but like again, what I would do is maybe it'd be really interesting to ask Hasan's chat to get to like a poll, right? And to be like, let's say at the end of the year, chat gets to decide where like Hasan puts $1 million. Like chat gets to decide where $1 million of Hasan's money goes. That, you know, because I guess it's like they're collecting. You know, people have given their gifted subs. They get to vote on where like the pot goes. Do you think they would choose like, again, dishes out some grants to some co-ops, or they Hasan gets a new car? They'd probably go for the fucking co-ops. Like shit. I don't know. I feel like if I was making this, if I was preaching socialism to an audience, or preaching my values, and a huge portion of my money was coming from the donations of my community, I feel like I'd at least give my community a say to some degree on like where some of that spare change goes. I just like, I don't know. To me, when you go into like sports cars and mansions, you're just not that different from a capitalist who gives some money to charity, which is fine. You can do that. That's your choice. But yeah.
And why I want my viewers to be invested and interested in doing whatever the fuck they want to. The funny thing is, I know I train is so fucking horny bringing up the mods. Oh, it's probably okay.
Wait, why is it?
Okay. It seems like
so
this topic.
One thing that you need
why
to.
Is it? Is it what I pay my mods? Is that why?
Well, I don't know, but one thing that you need to also understand is that, and this is a really good conversation, I brought up a cooperative ownership of the podcast specifically because it's one very unique formation of workplace democracy, because someone in that situation is generating value, right? Someone in that situation is generating value. They're working, they're laboring, right? And instead of a wage compensation in that structure, I'm giving them a percentage of revenue. Now, originally, when the podcast wasn't generating any revenue, I was just paying out of pocket to be like, listen,
it's the internet. The money would be go to a brothel or alligator. No, you can choose. You can just choose options, right? He's got that choice. If I won't say community, just vote for fucking anything. No, you can just say like A or B or C.
Whatever you want, you know. Eventually, we will be able to generate revenue, which we are now. And at that point, you'll be able to get a third of that, right? There are certain aspects of it that I want to maintain and make sure that is as ethical as possible, right? In that structure. That is the reason why I brought up the third in the cooperative formation, a third of the revenue in the cooperative formation, is because that is only one element of a pay structure. There are many different ways of doing it, but the one fundamental thing that remains is worker autonomy and people that are generating value getting back what they make, getting back what they add. That is inherently a socialist way of working.
They're getting back what they add, and who determines what they get paid based on what they add?
Well, in that circumstance, there is no perfectly scientific way. I mean, we're getting into the labor theory of value, obviously, but there's no...
Not the labor theory. Oh, God, the labor theory of value is such dog shit. Like, you don't need it. One day we can go into why Marx didn't probably believe in labor theory of value either for a few different reasons, but...
In my opinion, there's no adequate way of making that assessment, which is why I oftentimes will leave it up to people that are making the demand itself while they're simultaneously generating revenue. Because there are a lot of situations where a venture that you get into is not actually making money, right? And I think people are still generating some sort of value, even when they're not actually making money, because even when the business itself is not actually making money, because the business could potentially make money in the future. Do you understand? Which is why I think it's better off left up to the people that left up to the people that are working in that circumstance.
Yeah, I think the problem is that
by the way, I can't believe the level of interrogation that is happening with my own personal finances or the way I live my life is unimaginable. But the reason why I do it is because it is something that I'm...
It's charity socialism. Why does a socialist have to donate all their money? I don't know why people have to go to this extreme, right? It was like with the fucking mansion and people are like, oh, socialism is when no house. It's not when it's when fucking no house. The problem is that you have to bring it back to like, why do you become a socialist? And one of the reasons I imagine people become socialists is because like of the problems of the kind of like gross social inequalities that are produced by capitalism. Capitalism puts workers and bosses in a very unequal relationship where on one end you can have people struggling to make ends meet while the others live in mansions and drive in sports cars. And that's a problem. So I would imagine if you wanted to promote a world outside of that, I don't know why you would go and choose like the lifestyle that is produced mostly by capitalism. Like the reason we have that lifestyle existing is mostly because like the reason there are a bunch of other mansions around like Hasan and all that is because of capitalism, right? It's because like very few workers in a company would vote their boss into a mansion while they struggle to get healthcare, right? So I don't know why when you have the choice between like a $3 million house and however much like the sports car was and just like, I don't know, a cheaper house and like supporting a co-op. So just to try and like push your values. The first step is to spread the ideology. Well, okay, I feel like a lot of people in the world are socialists. I don't know. I feel like that first step has been crossed.
I'm very confident in. Okay, it is something that I'm very confident in the way that I live it, but it is a ridiculous ask. I want people to understand. Like, I don't have an issue talking about this shit, but it is fucking wild. Like, not a single streamer has ever been asked this level of fucking detail in any minor thing that they do. Not even motherfucking train wrecks, okay? And he gets shit on a lot.
Actually, I've revealed all that.
But it's really frustrating that, like, this is a fundamental thing I believe in, and I advocate for, and I practice what I fucking preach, and yet motherfuckers still always say that I am actually fake. Because people cannot comprehend that it could work that way.
It's not that you're fake, it's that there's certain areas that are hypocritical in nature, right? Like there are certain areas where you pick and choose when socialism applies and when capitalism is okay.
No,
yet you preach anti-capitalism in every direction.
Okay.
But you retained none of the things that I just told you, Train. Like I just spent the past hour.
You do all know that in a true communist system there would be less with scarcity, right? Would there be more mansions then? It's actually more socialist to have a mansion. Sorry, not a mansion. A very large house. God. Think of it this way, like think about socialist firms, right? Think about or not socialist, or like firms that live up to the idea of socialism, like co-ops. Think about something that one of the results of them is that workers tend to earn a little bit more than workers do in traditional firms. That's the case in Mondragon. Like the lowest earner in Mondragon, or like a bottom level worker in Mondragon earns more than what their contemporaries would in a private industry. That's the case. And the boss, the highest earner in Mondragon, is not a millionaire. That's what worker discretion does. And that's part of what you might want the world to look like, is recognizing that a lot of this opulence and all that shit is like, it can exist so long as the people who create that wealth allow it. But it looks like in Mondragon they don't. It looks like most workers would actually prefer to have that their bosses didn't earn that much when they get the choice. I feel like people like suddenly just like to narrow down the definition of socialism so tightly because it avoids this question.
Where you peered into like literally the minutia of my operation, looking for like different places, different avenues to strike. I described all of it to you, and you won't give me the dignity. You won't even give me the dignity of like listening, hearing, and processing that information. That's kind of fucked up. It just seems like an ambush at this point.
No. I listened and I processed. And there is areas
where... The valuable question is because inherently you're a political streamer and you talk about aspects of socialism and then that's what you preach. It's like saying, yo, dude, why do people ask what stocks a stock streamer has on the stock market and not the Apex streamer? Well, because the guy who plays Apex never talks about stock. You talk a lot about like finance and the means of production and all the money. Of course, they're going to inquire about where your money is and what you're doing with it to better these systems that you're talking about. I think it's just
not necessarily true. No, the only reason why they do that is to literally look for hypocrisy baiting, and it doesn't even matter. No matter how genuine, no matter how consistent you are, it literally doesn't matter because ultimately, like in the beginning of this conversation, I had a conversation with Trainwreck about literally something that he believes I did that I told him I didn't do, and he couldn't bring up any fucking counters to it. Like he couldn't bring up proof to it, and yet we still left it on a 50-50 split.
Well, for that, I remember
like that's crazy.
But the point of that was the pattern of behavior, right? And I have a lot of viewers messaging me; they remember exactly that, right? But to bring up a clip regarding passive shit talk or the letting of to kind of push the narratives, right? I can't provide you with a clip at this time. And even if I couldn't, I remember it happening. So that's why we moved on and we agreed to disagree.
What else do you guys not agree on?
That was just showing a pattern of behavior. But that's not enough for us to not come to a middle ground and say, fuck it. Like,
well, no, I think...
Let's get back to the Will Neff clip, right? So I think you're asking about the Will Neff clip, right? And we kind of went off.
What did you bring up about the charity for Turkey and how did it come about? Why did you say it?
Just watch the clip.
Okay, fair enough. Everybody. I'm going to link a clip in the current chat going on over here, and you're gonna click and you're gonna watch it on your own with your community, and then we'll discuss when Train picks up, and not Hasan.
Okay.
And we'll start because it's his clip. I want to give him a chance to explain his own clip. Otherwise, we're gonna get lost.
I just realized a bunch of unsub people were in chat. Is that because it's Hasan viewers who aren't normally here? Is that what's going on? I'm starting to notice in chat there's a bunch of new people who seem to be all pro Hasan, so I guess it's Hasan viewers. Yeah. All right. It's okay. I'm not against that. I don't know why it took me so long to figure it out.
Where is it? Oh,
remember the Hall of Door? Thanks for the Prime subsidied.
In the
group chat.
Match a small percentage.
Okay, I gotta pee while this plays. Look at him undermining 50 grand. Like, I'm sorry, I don't have like $700 million from fucking crypto gambling sponsorships. Like, that's crazy. He just said a small percentage, like 50 grand from my pocket is like tiny. Like, listen, I don't really talk about this too frequently, but goddamn do motherfuckers always undermine that shit. They don't shut the fuck up about a $1,000 shirt for 700 years. But the moment that I fucking put 50 grand out of my own goddamn pocket to something I fucking believe in, that's a tiny percentage, dog. What the fuck? If you can't shut the fuck up about the $1,000 Gucci shirt, you should be 50 times more vocal about the 50 grand, right? Not once did I ever bring that up.
Yeah, but the shirt was fucking minging though, wasn't it? The shirt was a lot more than 50 grand's worth of minging. Anyway. Oh God. Okay, that debate was interesting, but I don't know if I need to hear the system fucking bullshit what is socialism argument again. Do I need to hear it again? I think we're maybe done. I think we've maybe exhausted whatever is left of the 2.5 hour fucking debate. Is there anything new? Is there going to be new information? That's probably a long segment anyway. I paused a lot. Oh, God. All right. Here's the moral of the story. Just to cap, just to summarize. charity and like fulfilling principles of socialism and mutual aid and anarchism are not completely separate. They can overlap. So if you donate to a mutual aid organization, that is technically charity, but mutual aid organizations don't work in the same way as charities. They're a much more voluntaristic system, and they're a lot smaller and they're a lot more decentralized. There's a lot more give and take. So people who often contribute to mutual aid can also receive help from mutual aid groups. This is like after like Hurricane Katrina, the mutual aid groups would help people like fix their roofs. But if you were contributing to mutual aid, you would get your roof fixed as well. It's a very like from each according to their ability, to each according to their needs. It's not even completely separate from that's from Marx, by the way. So there's a bit of overlap there. Just because it's charity doesn't mean you can't also be fulfilling socialist or anarchist principles at the same time. So that's probably not something to write off immediately, although I don't know if that's exactly what Train was advocating for, because he kept on saying system, which I think he was alluding to mutual aid, but not well enough. As for what you can do as a socialist streamer, well, if you think co-ops should be a thing, then I don't know, it shouldn't cost, if you're a millionaire, it shouldn't cost like a huge portion of your income to maybe give out some grants to co-ops, and maybe even let your communities like maybe hear a bunch of co-ops applying for grants, and then the community can choose, so they're involved as well. And maybe you can direct it straight from Super Chat, so that if you're a community viewer, like if you're giving a sub, or if you're buying a sub, or gifting subs, that's like, well, a portion of my income is building socialism, is pushing co-ops, setting an example. So yeah, there's a lot of things you could push for. That are maybe more in line with socialist principles than living a very opulent lifestyle like Hasan seems to enjoy. I don't know. They're not even completely mutually exclusive. Like you can probably still keep, with the amount Hasan seems to make, you can probably have the house and build up a bunch of co-ops as well. Fuck knows. But personally, I don't like mansions or whatever the fuck kind of category of house he lives in. I think people should probably fucking... I think... if you are like pro-worker co-op, well, it seems to be the case that as soon as workers get the choice, they don't let their bosses live in like multi-million-dollar homes. They tend to not like that, because it's just, if you could choose for the fruits of your labor to go somewhere else, you usually would. Can you imagine if you polled the chat of a very wealthy socialist streamer and they said, okay, there's like, beyond my means, there's like maybe 5 million worth of shit that this community is mustered through donations and fucking ad money and gifted subs. Well, where does this go? Can it go? Do you want it to go to a mutual aid org? Do you want it to go to a fucking co-op grant system? Or do you want it to go to buying me a new horse? Or a yacht, fucking, yeah. Well, let the community decide, you know? Let's see and then whether the values can reflect through them. I don't know. I think there's a lot of different creative things you can do to set yourself apart from just every other pro-capitalist streamer, but yeah. That's just me. I don't earn enough money to come close to think about this shit. I just wonder how you'd feel if you had 30,000 viewers. I hope it comes true and we get to see. You know what? Fucking hell. There you go. Get Hasan to give me his audience for a year and see what happens if I just become a capitalist. Like, personally, I don't know. Like, I just don't have... I mean, even now, like, I don't really earn that much money, but I don't need that much money for what I want my computer, I want internet, and I want to go on holiday, like, maybe twice a year to some shithole in Europe that doesn't cost that much to go to anyway. I don't know. I'm not saying you can't like treat, like, again, the executives of co-ops still earn like, I think they earn like a few $100,000 a year. I'm not against people earning money and shit like that, but I think one of the final question, if you ever have this argument with someone who's trying to justify like a very opulent lifestyle as a socialist streamer or as a socialist, it's just be like, okay, why are you a socialist? Because the reasons that you're a socialist, because you don't like inequality, because you don't like workers having low discretion, because you don't like the fact that people have to pay out the fucking pay an arm and a leg for healthcare, because you don't like it that people have to work all the time, but they can barely make ends meet, because you don't like it that people have to like pay X percentage of their income for fucking food and basic shit. Well, you can alleviate all of those social ills without doing something that is quote unquote socialist, right? Without actioning socialism in the world. So I think that's a better thing to think about, is like, you don't make these decisions with what you do with your resources based on whether or not it is socialism, but whether or not it alleviates the things, or whether or not it pursues the ends that made you a socialist in the first place. But yeah. Okay.